Consider This, a program of issues and information behind today's news.
I'm so happy. I'm thrilled, actually, that we were able to hopefully shine a light on Alzheimer's disease. So many people with this disease feel isolated and marginalized, and one of the wonderful things about movies is it makes us feel seen and not alone.
This belongs to all of those people around the world battling ALS. It belongs to one exceptional family, Stephen, Jane, Jonathan, and the Hawking children. Thank you.
She portrayed Alice Howland and he, Stephen Hawking. Oscar-winning performances for Julianne Moore and Eddie Redmayne, and much needed awareness for Alzheimer's and ALS. Hi everyone, I'm Kathy Wyatt. Welcome to this week's edition of Consider This. Our topic, movies that move us. Joining us to talk more about it are Clayton Freeman, Regional Director of Programs and Public Policy for the Nebraska chapter of the Alzheimer's Association, and Tammy Stalzer, Administrative Coordinator for ALS in the Heartland. Thank you both for being here and welcome to the program.
Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you. Clayton, I want to start with you. How do you define Alzheimer's disease?
Well, Alzheimer's disease is a progressive brain disease that affects memory, thinking, and behavior. It is the sixth leading cause of death in this country, and of the top 10 causes of death, it is the only disease right now with no way to prevent, slow, or cure it. It's a devastating disease in that it takes a toll not only on the person with the disease, but with their caregivers.
Okay, thank you. Tammy, what about ALS? How do you explain that to people?
Well, ALS is a neurodegenerative disease. I often actually describe it as the opposite of Alzheimer's in that the brain is the only thing at the end of the disease that is not affected. It affects every muscle. It rids of every muscle in the body. It can start in one of three places, either in the lower extremities, which would be the legs, feet, etc., the upper extremities, which would be your hands, arms, or the bulbar region, which would be breathing, talking, and eventually no longer being able to breathe at all. And so that's how I usually define it, as the opposite of Alzheimer's, ironically, but both terrible diseases.
Tell us about ALS in the Heartland.
Okay. ALS in the Heartland was formed in 2006. We actually broke off of the National ALS Association at the time, and still to keep 100% of dollars raised in Nebraska to serve patients and their caregivers and their loved ones, their families typically who care for them. With our services, we provide a variety of free services to any family members or any individuals with ALS.
And how were you introduced then to this organization?
I was actually introduced by my coworker who also works with me. Sabrina Shalley is our patient services director. Her and I actually worked together for 10 years in another nonprofit in Nebraska, and she introduced me 6 years ago to come here and help raise awareness of this disease as well as funds for the disease.
So let me ask you, Tammy,
Okay.
what do you find to be the most beneficial part of your job? Why do you get up every morning?
Oh, geez, there's so many great parts of my job, so that's actually a very hard question, but I would say it is being able to help the people we work with. There is not a reason that this disease takes place. There is no treatment that works for this disease, and there is no cure. So unfortunately, typically 2 to 5 years, it is a terminal illness. It has no good ending. However, I work with the neatest, I'm sure Clayton does as well, but I feel like I work with the neatest people that need our help, and we can give them something as simple as some bandages that they need to do something, and they are praising us. So who gets to do that? Who gets to realize how humble we are every day?
Yeah, and Clayton, probably much the same story with you and the Alzheimer's Association. You've been there 8 years.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit first about what you do on a day-to-day basis there.
Well, I'm the Director of Programs and Public Policy. Every day for me, though, is how are we going to better serve the people that walk through our door, who call us on the phone, who need our assistance. So we are poised every day to give help and hope. And that might be just giving someone, as you said, a phone number for an in-home care provider to help them understand what this disease is, to just listen to them tell their story. For me, it is that interaction that gets me up every day. I go in, and my goal is to have a sign on my door one day, Clay, go home, we found a cure. That would be the ultimate. But until then, I get to work with wonderful people who provide great service. But it's those caregivers and those people with the disease who are asking for help. And we just put our arms around them. You know, we embrace them.
And you have been doing that over your time there at the association. I would imagine 8 years doesn't seem like a whole lot of time, but over that span, there have been some pretty significant changes, I would imagine. Talk to us about what you've seen just from the time that you started there.
Oh, it's amazing. You know, I think about what we're able to offer people now in terms of an understanding of the disease, the symptoms, the progression of the disease, how to understand ways to help their loved ones with their behaviors or with their activities of daily living. We just know so much about the disease more. We know more about the brain, that last frontier. We're able now to diagnose it so much earlier and better, so we can provide them with some of those medications and the activities and the diet and the lifestyle changes. I've seen a change in awareness from when I first came. You know, we did a walk, we had, you know, maybe 500, 600, now we have 2,000 people at a walk. We have movies like Still Alice out there doing this. The understanding of just how this disease needs to be presented to the public without that stigma. So I see more people coming in now and saying, I have questions about it. They're more willing to call us and say, what's next? I have this disease.
Mm-hmm. You said something earlier about being diagnosed sooner, which does bring us to the movie and to Alice Howland. I mean, she was 50 years old when she started realizing that there was something wrong. And before we talk about that, I want to show the viewers a clip in terms of when it started to dawn on her that things were different. She was running on campus. Let's take a look. What are you thinking watching that clip?
It's devastating. Here's this young woman who literally is losing herself. To have run that route probably every day and now not knowing where she's at, how she got there, why she's there. And you can just see the pain and the anxiety in her. That sense of, I don't understand what's happening to me. And we see that so often in this disease, that people are losing who they are. And it's scary. I see her anxiety, I see her fear. The first time I saw it, it was gut-wrenching, because she's literally lost her ability to really orient herself to where she's at that moment.
Which, Clayton, is one of the 10 warning signs.
Yes.
And we want to put these up for viewers. Very, very important that people understand how significant it is for you to not only recognize something like this, but to actually act on doing something about it.
Right.
Walk us through these.
Well, the 10 warning signs, probably the most classic with Alzheimer's is this memory loss that disrupts daily life. Relying more on memory aids, other people to remind you, to lose track of very common events, recently learned information. In this state, we've seen people not being able to remember current events, like what they did that day, but being able to remember events in what we call their comfort memories of the past. So losing that, we call it a 5-minute memory sometimes. Challenges in planning or solving problems. We all get up every day and plan our life, but when we can no longer plan, we can't look forward and say, what am I going to do next? Or solving problems, like even doing a budget, or doing my checking account or something. Those kind of things now become so difficult because I can't concentrate on it. Familiar tasks, things that you did every day that were easy and you did them without a lot of need for memory now become more difficult. I always think of the example of a lady who said to her husband, I no longer want to crochet because I don't want to do it, it's no more fun. Well, she was forgetting how to do it. It's too complicated. Something as simple as that. Confusion with time or place, you just saw it. Alice being lost in a familiar place. People can forget what time of the day it is, seasons of the year, need constant reminders of when the next thing is going to be happening in their life. We see the great risk of wandering. Alice got out and not able to, how do I get back to where I belong? And being so disoriented, we call it wandering, and what a risk that is. Visual and spatial images, reading, problems with that. Spatial relationships, walking and gait, judging distance, issues with maybe going up and down stairs. So really knowing how far I am or how close. Driving is a good example of this. All the visual and spatial things that go with driving become so difficult. Words and language, you see this early sometimes in the disease, not being able to find the right word. Or calling something strange, like a gentleman who called his watch his wrist clock. Not being able to put sentences together and really finding that the words aren't matching with what I'm looking at or I'm identifying. This is one that we hear a lot about, misplacing things and losing the ability to retrace my steps. Well, if I put my keys in the same place every day, I'd be fine, but I don't. But I can retrace my steps and find my keys. In this case, we're losing things or things are showing up in odd places, and I'm not able to go back and find it. There's a commercial now that the Alzheimer's Association is running where a gentleman finds his wife's keys in the refrigerator, in an odd place. Things are just not showing up where they should be. And again, it's losing it, and I can't find it. Decreased or poor judgment, boy, now we see things like personal grooming, not taking care of yourself. Things in the home begin to deteriorate. You might find food in the refrigerator that's very old because no one's really taken it out. We see problems with money here, perhaps not using money correctly. Mom's buying things on the TV, and UPS is delivering them every day because she's kind of lost that ability to judge that. Withdrawal from work or social activities, this is interesting because we see people saying, I don't want to go to work, I don't want to be around people. It's becoming harder and harder for me to follow conversations. I feel so odd in situations where I maybe not remember someone. So they begin to pull back from the things they love, hobbies and that. And so we tell people, when that starts to happen, that's just not normal. People don't do that. And then mood and personality changes, certainly. Things like suspicion and paranoia. If I think someone's taken something I own and I can't find it, I'm suspicious or I'm paranoid of who these people are, why I can't understand things around me. Or mood changes, mom or dad may have been very easygoing and now they're much more difficult to handle. So that reversal of kind of mood and personality. Some people say, my loved one just doesn't seem to be who they used to be. They're just not who they are. So these warning signs, we tell people all the time, if you're seeing one of these that's affecting your daily life to the point where you're saying, it's really bothering me, get to the doctor. Go see your physician. Tell them exactly what's going on. Or for family members to write down what they're seeing, give it to the doctor and say, look, we're concerned. These are the things we're starting to see. So I encourage people to get on our website at alz.org, look at the warning signs, read through them, and don't even think about just your own immediate family, but your friends, neighbors, co-workers. This disease is now spreading, And if you don't know someone with it, you probably will. So we need to have eyes out watching and making sure people know these signs.
Thank you. All right, Tammy, initial stages of ALS look like what? And we have a graphic here that we want to put up for our viewers as well. So walk us through these.
Okay. Well, they can certainly vary, and as I said earlier, it can begin in one of three areas. So either the lower extremities, the upper extremities, which would be the arms, hands, etc., or the bulbar region, which is the speech, etc. We'll start with the muscle weakness. Typically, the muscle weakness is going to be seen either in the lower extremities, which would be the legs or feet, or in the upper extremities, the arms or hands. Maybe someone goes to turn a doorknob and can no longer grasp that doorknob as well. If it's in the legs or feet, sometimes they say they feel like they trip once in a while on their feet, or their feet might catch because they're dragging their foot along. Going to grasp a coffee cup in the morning, grab a pen, any of those normal things that your muscle is maybe not as strong to hold. Twitching, oftentimes individuals with ALS will say they have a muscle twitch. We've all had a muscle twitch somewhere. It's usually quick. It usually goes away as quick as it comes. In a person with ALS, they've said, I've not ever lived it, but they've said that it will kind of tremor and twitch continuously. I did even have one patient say that the doctor turned off the lights in the room and said, look, and held a flashlight over the muscle and watched it as it moved up and down and twitched. So I think it can get to a pretty extreme measure. As I said, the impairment of the use of arms and legs, that tripping, that falling, and eventually, as I've said with this disease, they will lose all ability to use the arm and legs. Again, the only thing eventually that they'll be able to use is the brain. So all the while, they're watching, kind of a prisoner in their own body as they lose the ability to simply walk. They do say that the bladder functioning does still work as well, but you can't get up to use the restroom. You can't pull down your pants or pull them up, etc. So as far as the bulbar region, thick speech, meaning maybe they're having a harder time speak, eventually lose the ability to speak because they lose those muscles. Maybe you can hear it sometimes in their voice. It's just more difficult, more slurred the speech is. Their voice doesn't carry as far, etc. Having difficulty swallowing or shortness of breath, I guess, also could be. The diaphragms have muscles, and those eventually lose the ability to help a person breathe. But then even prior to that is swallowing. So food, feeling like they're going to choke, feeling that sort of feeling.
Before we take a look at a clip from The Theory of Everything, because we're joining Stephen Hawking later in his disease, tell us a little bit about this man, right? Paint a picture of really who he is. Yeah.
Well, Stephen Hawking is a brilliant, brilliant man. A scientist. If you've watched the movie, you see some of the things he accomplished prior to and even after he was diagnosed with the disease. He is a bit different in the normal movement of this disease, and that is because typically this disease, once upon diagnosis, and diagnosis, there isn't any one definitive test, so it usually takes a very long time to diagnose this disease. They don't want to tell anyone they have ALS. So after, sometimes it takes years to diagnose. Upon diagnosis, typically they have 2 to 5 months to live. I've seen 18 months, I've seen a couple weeks. He is an unusual case that he has lived for a very long time and is still living with this disease. So he has lived in this very devastating, paralyzed state that he has for a long time, an unusual amount of time.
Well, let's take a look at this clip, and again, he has progressed, so let's take a look at a clip from The Theory of Everything.
Blink to choose the colour of the group of the letter you want, Stephen. Green. Blue. Pink. Black.
What is important for us to know watching a clip like that?
It's so heartbreaking. This is what this disease is. It is what it comes to. It's heartbreaking for the individual with ALS who no longer can do simple communication. Exactly in that circumstance, they were trying. What she was trying to do was have him use what's called a letterboard. And it is used. There is even far larger technology now, that computers and all these things that people can use their eyes that maybe still work to tell a computer what to say, so then the machine will then say what it is. But it's also so heartbreaking for his wife, Jane, in that the caregiver, the person who's exhausted from caring for someone 24/7, and to watch them and know that they want to speak and communicate and no longer can do that. So it's just, it's devastating and it's paralyzing, and that shows what happens when it hits the bulbar region. And sometimes it starts there.
So tell us, how did movie makers do with this film? Because sometimes we'll go to a movie and it's about something in particular, and you may walk away and think, oh, that's not really how it goes. Pretty spot on with this movie, Tammy, in your opinion, just based on the various scenarios that you've lived?
Yes and no. I actually asked an expert who lived this disease for I would say a long time, but about 4 years, what they thought. Because as I watched it, I thought it looks definitely like an ALS patient and what it is and what the disease is. She described it as a sugar-coated version, which makes sense for something that is as ugly as this disease, to put it out there to the world. She said sugar-coated in that it did not show the very, very devastating effects of this disease. It showed a man who was confined to a wheelchair and needed to be fed. It didn't show his feeding tube or his trach, or the fact that he had to have 24/7 care to be moved from his bed to his chair to the bathroom. It didn't show some of those pieces. It did show that how hard this is on a caregiver, as is Alzheimer's. It's a difficult disease, and that a caregiver needs a break. It showed that, which is important. It showed the letterboard, which is a form of communication. It showed many things that were important. So yes, it definitely, they were on with it, but they certainly sugar-coated it a little bit. And I'm just so absolutely thrilled that there's something out there that shows what it is. Whether that is sugar-coated or not, we need awareness of ALS.
Thank you. Clayton, talk to us. We've mentioned caregivers quite a bit here. And in the movie Still Alice, you know, she, like so many, has the family, right? The spouse and the daughter and so forth. What is important for those who've not really been directly involved in caregiving, 24/7 especially? What's important for those on the outside looking in to really know, in terms of just realizing, understanding, and being able to step in and help a person who oftentimes says they don't need it, right? Caregivers are pretty strong people and pretty stubborn.
Caregivers are my heroes, and they're heroic. Sometimes they're too heroic. I think they sometimes don't understand that they need time for themselves, respite. We call it the 36-hour day. It's like with you, you know, it's devastating to see this person that you love fading away from you. I think in the movie it showed tremendously what a young family went through, the husband went through. Almost unbelievable denial, and then it sets in, this is what we're facing. This is the route we're going down. I think it shows the courage of caregivers, their strength, but it also reminds me that we have an obligation to help educate them, to provide them with information. Knowledge is power. And so in the movie, as you start to see the family understanding more, especially the youngest daughter, if you see the movie, she really comes to a revelation how she's going to have to relate to her mom. And so caregivers their lives change. They have to adapt and learn how to be with this person in new ways. So if anything about Still Alice is that this disease has moved out of a population of, we think, just older people, 70s, 80s, to a woman so young, representing over 200,000 in this country. So the effect on her family, different than it may be with a family that's older. But caregivers are remarkable. They're resilient, but I also see them Many times they go down before the person with the disease. It can be so stressful on them. So we have to take care of them. The person with the disease many times getting the best medical care, getting a lot of care, but the caregiver may not be getting the attention they need.
In just a minute here, I want to address, because of the earlier diagnosis, the teenagers. So we have people out there trying to figure out, what do we do with our kids, our teenagers and our preteens because of this younger age. What would you say to them?
To young people?
Yeah, on how to cope.
Get together with other teens or young adults who are facing the same thing you are. We need support groups for them too, and I think we're going to be developing more of that. Groups that are going to bring common denominators together. I know of one gentleman who put his life on hold to care for his mother, his career. Devastating, but such courage. We're going to see more younger caregivers caring for their adult parents. So what I would say to them is, get together, form alliances, learn, and then do things for the cause. We have a group called Alzheimer's, Young Alzheimer's Advocates. They're called YALZA. They're a great group. And they get together and they talk about the disease, and they're going to do some things that are going to give them a purpose to help out the cause.
Well, we're going to do something right now for our viewers, and that is to put up your websites, because great starting point, and phone numbers too for folks who don't have computers or aren't big fans of logging on. There are some phone numbers here that you can call as well. So alz.org, that's 800-272-3900, or alsintheheartland.org, 866-789-5512. Tammy Clayton, thank you for being here. Thank you for what you do on a day-to-day basis in terms of helping our caregivers and those who are affected by this disease. Thank you.
Thanks for raising awareness.
You bet.
Yes.
Thank you all for watching. We'll see you next week.
Consider This is an issues and information program produced by UNO Television. More information can be found at unotv.unomaha.edu. If you'd like to share your comments about this show, call UNO TV at 402-554-2516 during regular business hours, or email us at considerthis@tvmail.unomaha.edu.